Hello and welcome back to year 4 of the Religious Education Initiative. This is week 9, day 1. We're continuing our way through the book of Genesis. So, last week we saw Laban chase Jacob and his household as they fled from Padan Aram, and we saw how Laban accused Jacob of stealing away his daughters and his household gods. We saw Jacob respond in ignorance that no one had stolen Laban's gods and offer Laban to search all his possessions, laying a curse of death on anyone with whom they were found. Now Rachel hid the household gods she had stolen, and Laban didn't find them. So Laban and Jacob made a covenant that they would keep peace between the two of them, and Laban returned home. This time we will see Jacob, now free from the concerns of Mesopotamia, set his face toward a reckoning with his brother. This is verse 3 of chapter 32. And the last thing we saw was that angels of God met Jacob as he left his meeting with Laban. So Jacob sent messengers before him to his brother Esau in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, "Thus you shall say to my lord Esau, Thus says your servant Jacob, I have lived with Laban as an alien, and stayed until now, and I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male and female slaves, and I have sent to tell my lord in order that I may find favor in your sight." The messengers returned to Jacob, saying, "We came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you, and 400 men are with him." Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed, and he divided the people that were with him, and the flocks and herds and camels into 2 companies, thinking, "If Esau comes to the one company and destroys it, then the company that is left will escape." And Jacob said, "O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, Return to your country and to your kindred, and I will do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become 2 companies. Deliver me, please, from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I am afraid of him. He may come and kill us all, the mothers with the children. Yet you have said, I will surely do you good, and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be counted because of their number." So he spent that night there, and from what he had with him he took a present for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milch camels and their colts, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. These he delivered into the hand of his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, "Pass on ahead of me, and put a space between drove and drove." He instructed the foremost, "When Esau my brother meets you and asks you, To whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose are these ahead of you? Then you shall say, They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau, and moreover he is behind us." He likewise instructed the second and the third, and all who followed the droves. "You shall say the same thing to Esau when you meet him, and you shall say, Moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, I may appease him with the present, the blessing that goes ahead of me, and afterwards I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me." So the present, the blessing, passed on ahead of him, and he himself spent that night in the camp. The same night he got up, and took his 2 wives, his 2 maids, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them, and sent them across the stream, and likewise everything that he had. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until daybreak. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he struck him on the hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then the man said, "Let me go, for the day is breaking." But Jacob said, "I will not let you go, unless you bless me." So he said to him, "What is your name?" And he said, "Jacob." Then the man said, "You shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with humans, and have prevailed." Then Jacob asked him, "Please tell me your name." But he said, "Why is it that you ask my name?" And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the place Peniel, saying, For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life is preserved. The sun rose upon him as he passed Penuel, limping because of his hip. Therefore to this day the Israelites do not eat the thigh muscle that is on the hip socket, because he struck Jacob on the hip socket at the thigh muscle. Now Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on ahead of them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times, until he came near his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, and embraced him, and fell on his neck, and kissed him, and they wept. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he said, Who are these with you? Jacob said, The children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the maids drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah likewise and her children drew near, and bowed down. And finally Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, What do you mean by all this company that I met? Jacob answered, To find favor with my Lord. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. Jacob said, No, please, if I find favor with you, then accept my present, my blessing from my hand. For truly to see your face is like seeing the face of God, since you have received me with such favor. Please accept my gift, my blessing that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have everything I want. So he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, Let us journey on our way, and I will go alongside you. But Jacob said to him, My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the flocks and herds which are nursing are a care to me, and if they are overdriven for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant, and I will lead on slowly, according to the pace of the cattle that are before me, and according to the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir. So Esau said, Let me leave with you some of the people who are with me. But he said, Why should my Lord be so kind to me? So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built himself a house, and made booths for his cattle. Therefore the place is called Succoth. Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way from Padan Aram, and he camped before the city. And from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the plot of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar, and called it, The God of Israel is God. Okay, so first, this is a long reading. I don't know how to divide it up, because all of this goes together. So forgive the longer reading. There are a million things we could talk about this. Let's start from the end. It matters a great deal that when Jacob left his father-in-law behind, it required a treaty, it required a border, it required a witness, it required invoking the name of God, because there was bad blood still there, and both of them felt that they were vulnerable, that they needed a border, a separation. It's remarkable the way that Jacob left Esau before, that there is no need for this. Whatever happens in this passage, it results in a complete and perfect reconciliation between these two brothers. And remember, the last time Esau saw Jacob, he was determined to kill him. So, we need to understand how this happens. And this, I think, is the biggest deal. The key to this is simply in the way that Jacob addresses himself to Esau. And especially the Hebrew word, as I understand, for this present and gift is the same Hebrew word that we saw way back when Jacob deceived Isaac and took Esau's blessing. It's the same word as is used for blessing. So let's remember what the blessing was that Isaac gave to Jacob, that he intended to give to Esau. May God give you of the dew of heaven and the fatness of the earth, and plenty of grain and wine. Let peoples serve you, and nations bow down to you. Be Lord over your brothers, and may your mother's sons bow down to you. Okay, so it matters that Jacob calls Esau Lord every chance he gets. From the moment he first sends his messengers to where Esau lives in Seir, which becomes the land of Esau's descendants, to the moment that he sends all of these droves of cattle and livestock to Esau. He calls him Lord, he submits himself to him, and the most important line is in verse 10, when Jacob says, "Please, if I find favor with you, then accept my present from my hand. Accept my blessing from my hand." Jacob is giving back to Esau the blessing that he stole. Jacob has come to understand it was not supposed to be his. He doesn't need it. God has a different plan for Jacob, and it doesn't require him to be deceitful or to make war on anyone. God is taking care of Jacob, and Jacob makes things right with his brother by submitting himself to him and giving back the blessing he had taken. And Esau accepts it. We don't know whether Esau came out intending to do Jacob harm. The 400 armed men makes it seem like maybe that's on his agenda. But maybe he does intend simply to be an escort and bring them back. Regardless, the brothers are reconciled. Jacob, the deceiver, has repented. And as he repents, he wrestles with God in the middle of the night, and he gets a new name. Commentators love this passage, and everyone has a different take on it. What I think is worth paying attention to is the fact that there's a little bit of a play on words. In the Hebrew, it comes through more clearly, but the place, remember, Jacob's name is Jacob, and we should just pay attention to how that sounds, because the little stream they're crossing is only a little bit different from that. The letters are in a different order. So Jacob and his household crosses the Jabbok. Jacob crosses Jabbok. So this is a critical moment for him. And the displacement of his hip joint is that same root of the yak that is in Yaakov, which is the usurper, the displacer, the deceiver, the one who messes up the natural order of things and grabs something for himself. So Jacob effectively has Jacobness permanently in his body because his hip is out of joint and he limps the rest of his life. So on the one hand, his character is now visible and present everywhere, but where he exercised that deceit in strength and domination, now he carries the sign of that past in weakness and humility. And although he is struck by God in his hip and is out of joint, there's an element of justice too, because Jacob, when he was born, the reason he was given that name is that he was grabbing at his brother's leg, trying to get out first, trying to displace him. So now his leg has been displaced by the Lord. All of this is, I don't think it's made up. I think it's not coincidence. I don't think it's accidental. This is intentional, showing the mirror image, the completion of Jacob's story, or at least of this arc of his life. But in this wrestling, now weak, he still holds fast to the Lord and says, "I won't let you go unless you bless me." I think Jacob has a sense of who this is, and he wants to make sure. And God says, "What's your name?" And he says, "I'm Jacob." And he says, "Well, not anymore. You have striven with God and humans, and you have prevailed. You haven't been defeated. You've struggled, but now you've learned. You haven't been lost," as perhaps the idea. You've fallen into sin, you've failed a great deal, but you haven't been lost. You haven't quit. So we will call you Israel, because you strive with God and with humans. And Jacob says, okay, I have a new name now. And remember, the new name was the sign for Abraham that he was entering into his inheritance. When the son actually was born, then Abram became Abraham. And God refuses to tell him his name, as though saying, you know who I am. And then he blesses Jacob. And Jacob leaves, limping and continuing to limp for the rest of his life, but transformed. Now he bears the name of the covenant. Now he is Israel, and his descendants continue to this day, because the church is the Israel, the chosen people of the Lord. So there's more that we could say, but I think we're out of time. Well, let's just note, when he gets back to the promised land, he settles down. He enters into the promise. He builds a house. He builds booths. He builds sheds for his cattle. And he buys land, and he builds an altar, and he calls it the God of Israel. He is God. So we'll wrap up there. We'll see you all shortly for day 2. For the meantime, God bless you all.